Hey, Mountain View, this is Pastor Daniel and my beautiful wife, Amy, and we're here to tell you about an exciting new project called Paving a New Legacy.
That's right. This is a really great opportunity to set some stones in the ground as a memory of God's faithfulness to Mountain View over the years, God's faithfulness to each individual, to our family. We get to lay a stone in remembrance of my mom who passed in 2020.
Yeah.
We also get to lay a stone for our future legacy,
in
for
honor
our
of our
family.
children. Yeah.
So it's a really neat opportunity. You can tell
It
more
really
about
is. We're kind of paving the way from the old building to the new building and go right up to our baptism. There are 3 different sizes of pavers that you can purchase, again, as she said, in honor of or in memory of. And each one of these stones tell the story, not only of our church, but also of your family and for generations to come. You can go to mv.church and there find all the information that you need about this project that we hope you will get invested in so that we can pave a new legacy.
What's up, Mountain View? Joe Jameson here. I get the privilege of being the ministry's pastor at the Well Church in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I just wanted to thank you all so much for helping support our church by buying pew Bibles. And along with that, we have study Bibles for all of our small group attendees. So I just want to reach out. Thank you so much for all you do to help grow the kingdom. Love you guys.
Yo, Mountain View, Pastor Darren here from mv.church. And I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of our church. Thank you so much for believing us and supporting us. See, in November of this year, we launched a new initiative called The Time Is Now. Believing that after being portable for 10 years, the time is now for us to find a permanent location. And the fact that Mountain View would support us financially blows me away. In the middle of your own crazy circumstances, that you would still trust God, believe in building the kingdom above all else is evident of your spiritual maturity. See, they say spiritual maturity is evident when things don't go your way. And the spiritual maturity of Mountain View, Pastor Daniel, Miss Amy is absolutely evident, not only to myself, but our entire church. So on behalf of our church, I want to say thank you so much. We love Mountain View.
Let's give it up for you, who is so faithful to give and sow seeds into this ministry. And our guarantee to you is when you sow a seed into this soil, that we are faithful to sow seeds into other ministries all across the United States. We will never be the Dead Sea where everything comes in and nothing goes out. We are always a resource that takes things in and makes sure that we share the gospel with countries, or our states and countries all across the world. So my good friend from Michigan gave me a call and said, hey, we're trying to raise some money for our Bible study groups, pew Bibles, and tables. I said, how much do you need? He told me, and I said, I'll have a check in the mail tomorrow. And because of your generosity, they received it. I have another good friend, you saw Darren. He said, we want to buy some property. I said, we will sow a seed into your ministry. How much you need? He told me. I said, I can't do that, but I can see. Property's expensive, y'all. But I said, I can sow a seed somewhere. So it all because of your generosity, that you are spreading the love of Jesus Christ, being the hands and feet of Jesus all across the state of Arizona, even in Michigan. So thank you guys so much. We greatly appreciate that. Hey, listen, I want to welcome you today. My name is Daniel. Welcome those online. My goal is to help you win today, however you need to win in your life. If you are new or you are newer, I need to tell you that we have a rhythm here at our church. And for the past 9 years, February is what we call Miracle Month. And that means that for 21 days, we gather together in the morning at 6 a.m. and we pray, but we also fast. And the reason why I'm telling you that is if you run across a greeter or an usher or a staff member and they are not as friendly as you would like for them to be or as friendly as you remember them to be, they are hangry right now. So please bear with them. They are fasting. And once we get food in March, everything comes back to life again. I also want to tell you that every year our rhythm is to sow a seed at the point of our need. Your seats are somebody's seed. This building is somebody's seed. This property is somebody's seed. That although they did not see you physically, they knew you would be here spiritually, so they sowed a seed for you to have this opportunity. And what that means is the last Sunday of February is our Miracle Sunday, where we sow a seed at the point of our need. And this year, we're giving you a tangible opportunity to write your name on a stone, because the stones will tell the story of the next season. And you can place one in memory of or in honor of. And here's the thing. We know that not everybody can buy a paver. That's okay. But everybody can do something. Not everybody will do the same thing, but you can do something, because there is something in the scriptures for everybody to do. So join with us in praying, fasting, but also on that Sunday, we all collectively, we're not looking for equal giving, but we're looking for equal sacrifice, that everybody can sow a seed in this season of our ministry. The title of today's message is this: 20-mile miracle. Let's say it together: 20-mile miracle. And to get us where we're going to end today, I want us to go to Joshua chapter 3. Now, I got to tell you, I'm going to do a little bit of teaching, and then if you're nice to me, I'm going to do some preaching. All right. 3 of y'all going to get a blessing today, because I got something in store. I hope all of y'all receive it. You might be able to listen to it, but that doesn't mean you're all going to receive it today. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim. It's important, young people, that you put the emphasis on the second part of that town, Shittim, because I grew up in church of a King James version, and we like to say words a little bit differently. So every time the Sunday school teacher asked me to read that, I said, I'll read that, because this is the only time I was allowed to cuss, is when I said King James verses of the Bible. But it's Shittim, okay? Just trying to help y'all. Set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. Everyone say crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. You are to keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits, that's 1,000 yards, 10,000 football fields, just for a great word picture there. Between you and the ark, which is the presence of the Lord, do not go near it. In verse 5, it's actually been the catalyst for our miracle month for the past 9 years. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. How many of you believe that if we will do the consecration, then God will do the orchestration? That if you set yourself apart, then God will still make moves in your life to perform miracles. So Joshua said to the priest, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. Tell the priest who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan waters, go and stand in. Everyone say in. Stand in the river. See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into. Everyone say into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in, say in, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. Now this is important. He makes sure that we understand this. The Jordan is at flood stage all during the harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam. We call it Adam, but it's actually pronounced Adam, in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priest who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stopped in, everyone say in the middle of the Jordan, and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. To get started with this message today and get all of our minds kind of working in the same place, I'm going to ask a question, and it's a literal question, so I want you to give me a real literal answer. And the question is simply this: where are you from? Go ahead and just throw out some answers. Where are you? Texas? Everybody who's Texas, from the great nation of Texas, is going to make sure they shout that out. Wyoming? Where else? Arizona, California, Tennessee. How many of y'all shouted the biggest city that was actually closest to your real city? Anybody do that? So, for instance, you may have said LA, but you're not actually from LA. You're from a city that is near LA. As you noticed, most people just shouted out the state. They didn't actually give us their city in which they are from. And I understand that because I grew up in one of those places that when you told somebody the name, you had to tell them another town that was close to your actual town. In fact, for many people in your day who may even be from the great state of Oklahoma, if I tell them that I'm from Berry Hill, Oklahoma, they say, "Where's that?" I've never heard anybody say, "Oh, I've always wanted to visit Berry Hill, Oklahoma." And I really don't know why, because it's a beautiful place. It's got rolling hills overlooking the Arkansas River. It's actually directly crossing. You can see the downtown city of Tulsa. But I've never gotten the response, "Well, Berry Hill's on my bucket list." Or, "I'd like to do a destination wedding there." Now again, it's a good place. But I learned growing up, about the age of 14, to tell people I live 5 miles outside of Tulsa along the Arkansas River. And that frame of reference for Berry Hill had to be identified by putting another place directly behind it. And over time, I just used to say, "I'm from Tulsa." And then even as I grew older and I moved to Arizona, I would say something like, "Well, I grew up in Oklahoma," as many of you just shouted back in return. When we look at Joshua chapter 3, it may be difficult to understand this miracle because we don't know the geography. As we said last week, in the scriptures, geography is theology, and theology is often geography. So we read about places, or we hear about places and things happening such as the Jordan River, and then we assume that it is a really big body of water. But if you've ever been there, you know that it's actually not. It's rather small. In fact, from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea, it's only 65 air miles. But due to its many twists and turns, it's about 150 miles long, with an average width of 100 feet and an average depth ranging from, watch this, only 2 feet to 10 feet. Now, we think it's big because it's so significant in Scripture. I mean, for goodness sake, it's mentioned over 185 times in the Bible. It's often associated with the prophets such as Elijah and Elisha. They're associated with the Jordan River. And then you get over into the New Testament, and John the Baptist is associated with the Jordan River because when he would preach, entire communities would, shut up shop, so to speak, and the whole city would come and listen and preach, with many of them repenting and being baptized, including Jesus Christ himself. There are many wonderful, amazing things that happened at the Jordan River, but it's not necessarily that big, but however, it is significant. So in the scriptures, size does not always determine significance. And in this particular passage, they are crossing into a particular place which would have been known and very relevant to the readers of Joshua. They would have said, "Oh, the Jordan River, I've heard of that place," or "I've been there before. That's where we did our summer vacations as a kid." Or we were even planning to take, like a family fall break trip next spring to the Jordan River. And for us, we hear places like the Jordan River, and we hear places like Capernaum, where Jesus did all of these miracles and that he based his ministry around the Sea of Galilee, but we don't really know the context. Because for the people in the New Testament, the Sea of Galilee actually meant a land of darkness. But for us, it's a land of light, and it's a land that's so beautiful because, I've heard about Galilee and the miracles that Jesus have done there, but that's not the truth. And I want you to keep this in mind as this nation, this birthing, this new group of people is walking towards the Jordan River after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And the writer is narrating this moment when the Israelites are on the brink of the promised land, but they still have the Jordan River in front of them. And the passage is highlighting for us God's miraculous intervention as he begins to instruct the priest to carry the Ark of the Covenant, which represents the presence of God, into the water. Thus, it would be displaying his power and faithfulness to lead his people into new territories and new beginnings. Because as we've been talking about the last several weeks, we as a group of people, even today, often face new challenges and have several seasons of transition in life. And Joshua chapter 3 is teaching us the importance of stepping out in faith and not stopping when we're at the banks of opposition. Because if we do, and we continue to move towards our destiny, we discover that God was always active in this process. Because as we're about to read, his presence has already gone ahead of us, enabling us to navigate these difficult terrains. So by stepping forward in faith and trusting in God's guidance, you and I, even today, will get to witness his power firsthand as we embark on new adventures and we leave old comforts and traditions behind. But the key is obedience. Obedience is the bridge through the Jordan and is always vital when God is calling his people to step into the unknown. And Joshua chapter 3 is teaching us, if you obey God's leading, even though the outcome is unclear, just like the Israelites did when the Jordan River was in flood stage in front of them, you will see God show up and show off every single time. Now, the first 6 verses are focusing upon the preparation and the anticipation of the Israelites, because spiritual readiness is always crucial before God will lead us into new ventures and new territories. So Joshua says, consecrate yourselves. And that is why here at Mountain View, we do our annual 21 days of prayer and fasting and our miracle offering. We are thanking God for everything that he has done, how God has sustained us through the wilderness and the difficult times. But at the same time, we are anticipating that he has more in store. So just like the Israelites, we are taking these steps of faith by giving a sacrificial offering. We are consecrating ourselves and sowing a seed because we still believe the Lord wants to do amazing things through his people, through our steps of faith and obedience. And the reason why is God does not always bless your good intentions, but he always supports the steps that we take. Now, I want to stop right here and say this. I don't know who this is for, but I need you to know something. The fact that you show up every morning and pray, the fact that you are at church today, the fact that you are fasting means that you are stepping into something. You are stepping into something by being at church today. You're stepping into something by giving today. You're stepping into something as you have lifted your hands in worship today, and God will honor that step. Now, I also want you to see this. Joshua and his people are about to step into something that the previous generation and their parents never had. Verse 4, since you have never been this way before. After 40 years of wandering, they are about to step into and experience something their grandparents, parents, their forefathers never had. And there are many of you in here today, and I don't know who this is for, that are living at a level that no one in your family has ever lived at. So you don't have a frame of reference for what this season should be like in your life because nobody modeled it for you. And the reason why I'm telling you that is I want you to give yourself patience today because you're stepping into something new. And we often don't give God enough credit or praise for how far he has actually brought us. Now, I don't want you to be prideful, but I do want you to be grateful about all the progress you've made in your life. And God brought you this far to take you to even a higher level. God is not done with you yet. So you cannot stop on this side of the Jordan, this side of your dream. You are closer to your Canaan than you think you are. Because they were on the brink of a new land. Amen. They were on the brink of a new land that God had promised centuries before. And they're going to have to step over these raging waters to get into the promised land. And he says, I want you to know something. I'm going to do it in a different way than I did in the generation earlier when they crossed the Red Sea. You remember that story? It was just 40 years earlier when God brought the generation out of Egypt to the Red Sea, where Moses at this moment had to take his staff, stretch it out over the sea, and the waters would part. The Bible subsequently says they went through on dry ground. Pharaoh and his army drowned. The chariot wheels fell off in the middle of the sea because God was finally setting his people free. But this time, it was going to be different. So again, let me stop right here and say, I don't know who this is for, but I do believe that it's pertinent for our church today. God is going to do something differently in the next season. What he has done in the past is not sustainable for what he wants to do in the future. So we cannot be afraid to leave some things behind because the Bible says God is doing a new thing. And it may be true in your life. There may be some things that you need to leave behind, or some people and places or occupation you've got to leave behind so God can take you to another level. So he tells Joshua, okay, I need you to follow the ark closely, which I said earlier, it represents the presence and the glory of God. He said, I want you to follow him closely because you've never been this way before. And I'm about to do a new thing. I will not repeat the same old routines and the same old traditions from your parents or previous generation. I want you to stop and be grateful for those things, but evaluate the things that you were handed down and ask, does this line up with what God is calling us to do right now and what he wants to do in the future? Again, this may mean we have to say goodbye to certain things from the season before so we can step forward. Because every single step that we take forward, God will make you stronger. Every single step you take forward, God will reveal something new. Every little single step we take, he says, I will be there every little step you take. We ain't got no Bobby Brown fans up here today. How swaggy is it that I can take Bobby Brown from Joshua chapter 3? Y'all don't even know Bobby Brown. That's Whitney Houston's husband, y'all. Man, that was some good stuff right there. Amen. That kid's got it. He gets it. Young man getting it. So Joshua gets the people ready and says, okay, let's cross over. Now I want you to notice in this moment, he doesn't give them their marching orders just yet for Jericho, which Jericho, as we read, was right over the Jordan. And it was a walled city, and they were terrified of it. And the reason why God doesn't give them their marching orders just yet, because their marching orders, if you know the story, and we'll get to it, we're going to be walk around the walls and blow your trumpets. If God had said, we're just going to walk around the walls and blow our trumpets, the army probably would have turned around and went home. You know what I'm saying? Because God doesn't show us everything we need to do while we're taking those steps. Because if he had told them, I'm going to take you to Jericho and the marching band is going to be the first line of defense for this fight, as a football player, I would have went back to the locker room. I said, call me when it's my turn. Okay. I didn't think you guys were going to get this. So I'm going to break it down this way. My son Noah, he's been snow skiing before, but I kind of say that he's been snow skiing rather lightly because he didn't really go snow skiing as much as he did as fall down and whine and complain and sit in the lodge and drink hot cocoa while the rest of us were snow skiing. But he goes to Grand Canyon University and he's a part of what they call ODR, or the outdoor recreational team. And that means he takes a lot of kids who are from out of state and he kind of shows them the things that Arizona has to offer. So here coming up in the near future, he's taken a whole group of young kids from Grand Canyon University snow skiing. And, you're snow skiing in front of your peers. So he says, Dad, do you mind taking me snow skiing one more time so I can actually figure this out and I don't look like a fool in front of all my peers? I said, absolutely, son. So New Year's Eve, I took Noah snow skiing and we had a great time, but Noah is my firstborn. And he's naturally just like terrified of everything. He's got to have a plan. He's got to have like a process. He's very protective of not only his life, but his little sister. So, Noah was, he was content with staying on the bunny slopes. And for those of you who don't know, like that's where you start, then you go to the greens, then you go to blues, then you go where I go, where there is no terrain. Double black diamonds ain't got nothing on me because it's hard to be humble when you ski like me. I could tell anybody that because y'all never been with me, right? But I was like, okay, Noah, you're gonna take this group of people and you can't stay on the bunny slopes the entire time. He's like, well, yeah, Dad, I can. And it's like, no, but I could not get him, no matter what I tried, to go on the lifts that would take him to a higher level. And I tried to explain, like, Noah, from the top, you can see the Grand Canyon. Like the sights from the top, the scenery is absolutely amazing. He's like, no, Dad. So I began to discover that Noah doesn't really understand the trail map system just yet. So that means he didn't understand that some gondolas and some lifts took you to certain terrains and other ones didn't. I'm not saying I was deceptive, Taylor, but what I am saying, I was selective. Because I made sure that I got Noah to the top of the mountain so that he could see and experience things that he never would have seen and experienced had he stayed at the bottom or had he known what the top skiing was actually going to be like. Follow me. You see, I tricked him into taking the next step. I'm not gonna say God is tricking you, and I'm not saying God is deceptive to you, but what I am saying is he's selective. That God will often only reveal what we need to know and what we need to do today, and that's it. So we're gonna look forward, but we're not gonna look too far forward or we're gonna trip. So he tells them, hey, let's go to the Jordan, but don't look over to Jericho just yet. Trust me in the small steps that you are taking today. Now, I want you to imagine the conversations they are having as they're walking and they're stepping towards something that they cannot see their way through. I've told you this a couple times for a reason and said that the Bible says Jordan is at flood season. Now, Jordan is naturally small. I told you that, except during the flood season, which the Bible made sure to tell us about in verse 15 when it goes from 100 feet wide to 2 miles wide. When it goes from being 10 feet deep to in some places over 100 feet deep. Okay, let me break this down for you because I still think you're working on it. That's all right. So many people have asked me about our building project. They're like, man, I bet you are so happy, and I bet that you, are so joyful and can sleep so much better at night because you finally got your building loan after all this struggle. And I said, I'm very grateful and I'm very appreciative, but in a lot of ways, I just shifted my stress. Because our first lending organization, who we had this 20-year relationship, we never knew when they were going to send money, if they would even send money throughout this time. But when they did, that money was free for us to use, however we needed it to be used. So if we needed it to be used on, like lights and sound or whatever it may be, we were free to do that. This new lending organization that we have does not do that. They only pay for construction, brick and mortar, doors and glass. Well, again, this process is carried out over a year, and you guys know that you have to order things ahead of time. So now I found myself in the middle of February when we're getting so close to the end, but all I can see in front of me is the floodwaters. Because now I need chairs, which thankfully you guys, you gave towards. But I've got to have tables. I've got to have lights. I've got to have sound. We've got to have a playground. We've got to have landscape. We got to have all these things that we thought maybe we could secure by placing a down payment. But now it's all coming due. And I'll be honest with y'all, I ain't got any money. So what I did is shift my stress because we're in the middle of flood season. So follow me. So when I read verse 17, and it says that the whole nation crossed on dry ground, I want to know, how dry was it? Because I don't know if you read the Bible like I read the Bible. But when I read stories like this, I often think that Christians or that pastors or churches make it sound too pretty, too easy. And if y'all been around me long enough, you know I ain't pretty, but I'm really, really gritty. So I kind of feel like Joshua would tell us, because he was the one who was actually there to say, hey, y'all remember y'all singing songs about them rolling back the Jordan River? Y'all remember shouting that, yeah, God allowed them to walk across on dry ground? What I want you to notice is that the Bible doesn't say he made a way around the river, that he actually made them step into the river. Okay. I'm not a scientist, y'all know that, right? But I can speculate, and forgive me for making a speculation here, that if the river was in the middle of a flood stage, and as we read 4 to 5 different times, I don't remember, God had them to step into it where water had just been. I don't know about y'all, but I'm thinking it was probably a little bit muddy. Okay. I didn't think y'all were gonna get this, but I'm fixing to start preaching it. Y'all gonna get it. Because y'all remember it was last February when we had to shut down this building. You guys remember that? Remember that? We had to stop building. But do you remember what happened during the month of February last year? It rained for almost 3 weeks straight. So what did that mean? It was a little bit muddy. So that means that some of the work that they were supposed to be doing, they couldn't even do, because remember, there was no ceiling and there was no walls. And if it's raining every day, you can't do the work. So every day I would go over there and I would make sure that I would walk through and make sure that I was praying. Now, y'all know that I like my shoes at mv. Church. Yeah? How beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel. I can preach shoes. I've got rock shoes on. Upon this rock I will stand, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against. I can preach shoes, y'all. But I can't be wearing my new shoes over in the middle of the mud. So y'all know what I did? I'm gonna tell you what I did. And y'all know that I'm anointed today because I got my Rocky socks on. I'll tell you what I did. I got on Temu and I stole me some steel-toe boots for $9.99. I got my identity stolen, but I got some boots stolen for $9.99. That ain't no joke, y'all. Y'all stay off Temu. That's some pastoral advice for y'all. You know what I'm saying? So I kept some boots here on campus that every time I would walk over that place, I made sure that I put my boots. Y'all mind if I come down there for a little bit? I feel like there's a little bit of distance between y'all and you're not really letting me preach to y'all. Is that okay? Let me come down there for a little second. I just want to check y'all's shoes for just a second. Oh, okay. Your sweetie must have got you some new sneakies for Valentine's Day. I see that. What you got on here? Oh, they look shiny. They look shiny. Oh, yours are glistening. Yours are glistening. But you ain't got no mud. What you got? You got some Adidas, some 3-Stripe Nation right here. Okay, I see you. Some Chucks. Ooh, Taylor. Air Force 1, 2 pair. Ain't nobody know about no Nelly up in here. Some Zooms. You know I know my shoes, my man. Okay. You going old school with the Blazers. But did you get some new shoes too? Look at these. But what I notice, y'all ain't got no mud. Can I tell you something that I've learned in 25 years of ministry? You want a miracle? You're going to have to go through the mud. Let me tell you something about all the people sitting on your row that you come to church and you're like, oh, they so nice and so pretty. They ain't got nothing wrong with them. Oh, let me tell you, you look close enough at their shoes, you're going to start seeing some mud. Because no mud, no miracle. Have y'all noticed that? That when you go through Scripture, every time God's about to take his people on the precipice of a new place, they're going to have to go through something that's really, really different. So here's what I've understood in 25 years. Oh, I expect the miracle, but I accept the mud that comes along with it. I'm gonna go back up here. Y'all ain't giving me nothing. You know what? Ain't even worth the price of admission right now. Because everybody wants to look all nice and neat and act like they got a perfect life, but you just ain't got close enough to see their mud yet. You know, we like shoes here. A little heat on the feet, a little sweating in my soul. I'm a lyrical gangster, y'all. But I don't want to be a pastor, and I don't want this to be a church that when you come up here, my shoes are so clean that you don't know the stuff I'm walking through right now. You need to see the mud on my boots so you don't feel bad about all the stuff that you're struggling with. Yeah, I've seen a victory. Yeah, I've given God 10 seconds of crazy praise. Yeah, I've seen a miracle, but I've got mud on my boots because this season of my life has been a little bit muddy. So what I'm trying to tell you is, if you're in the middle of a muddy situation, in the middle of a transition, trying to figure out what step do I take next? Do I go to college? Do I get a career? Do I have a kid? We can't have a kid. Do I raise a kid? Do I not kill my kid? Do I retire or do I reinvent? What I want you to know is mud is a transitionary time. It's not water, but it's also not dirt. So if there's any mud in your life right now, because you haven't crossed over into your Canaan just yet, and you're still standing in the middle, and you've got some mud on your boots, then I have a phrase for you to remember. No mud, no miracle. I'll keep walking, and I won't stop, because mud means a miracle is in the making. Somebody needs to check their neighbor's shoes today and say, you got any mud on your boots? You got any mud on your boots? Cleaning team's gonna be mad at me, but I don't care. I want them to clean this stage, and I want them to clean this carpet this week, because today is the day in Mountain View and is the church where you can come into the presence of the Lord, mud and all, in hurt and all, in brokenness and all, in doubts and all, in questions and all, in failures and all, in mistakes and all, and you can bring your mud until you get that miracle. As a matter of fact, the more mud you walked in here with, the more miracles you might be a candidate for, because that means you're walking through some stuff, and you're praying through some stuff, and you're pressing through some stuff. God is taking you to a new land that no one in your family has been before. Do y'all know something? Can I tell y'all something right here? I love the 11 o'clock. Y'all are the awesome crowd. Do you know that I've had 4 people tell me today that I look like somebody they know? And I said, why do y'all think all of us Ball brothers look the same? Because that guy's 6'5" and 250 pounds. We don't look the same. I don't know. I just figured I just had to tell somebody that. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It's good to see you, brother. Good. I miss you guys. How you doing, Tiffany? You've been flying all over the place. Is your arms tired? You've been flying all over the place? I'll just check him. Just check him. Because here's why. Every change God makes in your life will be muddy at first. I know it's Valentine's week and y'all don't want to admit this because you're like, I don't want to be throwing mud all over the place today. But you know marriage is muddy, right? Yes. It's Valentine's Day, Pastor. What you doing? Oh no, I'm just stirring stuff up. Okay. You know manhood today is a little bit muddy, don't you? Children are muddy. College can be muddy. Okay, y'all ain't gonna talk to me. Growing old can be muddy. Yeah, I know y'all. Every miracle starts with mud. But God shows you stuff through the mud that he's never gonna show you while you're standing on the bank. Yeah, it's confusing. And yeah, it's uncertain. But I know one thing. It might be muddy, but I'm going to make it. Somebody say, I'm stepping into it. So here we go. As soon as the priest who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. Now I need to talk to the young people in the room a little bit. They didn't listen to a podcast about the Jordan River at this time. They didn't read a few blogs about the Jordan River, the banks during the flood season. They didn't, take a class, a spiritual class, where they said, we need to know spiritually the significance of the Jordan River. They didn't do any of that. They had no idea they'd get through it, but they still stepped into it. And because they were obedient, the blessings started flowing. As soon as their big toe got wet, the Bible says the water stopped flowing upstream. Tell your neighbor, God's doing something upstream. He's doing some upstream. Can I tell you what they did not have when they stepped into the overflowing river? A good feeling. Again, let me speak to the young folks for just a moment. Y'all been taught that you've got to feel everything. That you need a faith that feels it. No, what you need is a faith that will step into something even though you don't have a good feeling about it. We need a faith that will bring us to the brink of something that will be a breakthrough. Even in that moment, we don't know how it's going to be moved out of the way. Because the nature of Christian faith is distinctive from any other kind of faith. Y'all know that, right? I mean, we've got faith for everything today. You got to have faith to faith to faith. So we're putting faith in governments. We're putting faith in people. We're putting faith in cars. We're putting faith in the Kansas City Chiefs. We're putting faith in Philadelphia Eagles. Ain't nobody got no faith for the Cowboys. Let's just leave that right there. It's getting crazy up in here. I don't even know what's taking place right now. But the nature of Christian faith is distinctive from any other kind of faith. It was in the 1600s in England, theologians got together at Westminster Abbey. There's a civil war happening in the country, and they were about to boil down the faith to the distinctives. The Westminster Confession, which we mentioned last week, came to be one of the core documents for Reformed Christianity. One of the things they said about faith was this: it is not of yourselves, it is a gift of God. It doesn't depend on you because it comes from Him. So even though if you have a confused faith, a frustrated faith, a muddy faith, a shallow faith, we serve a great big God who is sovereign over the affairs of men. And the amount of faith that you show in your steps is directly related to the amount of faith that you have in His sovereignty. So the moment that you start to tell God about all the reasons why He can't use you, why you can't do this, your faith kicks in and gives you the sense that He knew you'd be in this situation before you got into it, so therefore you step into it anyway. And as I step, He makes me strong. As I step, I began to see God was up to something all along, because the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan. The Jordan is where they crossed over, but that's not where the miracle started. It started in Adam, which was in a place that you've never heard of, Zarethan. You remember how I started this message by asking you the city that you were from? Y'all thought I was getting old and senile, didn't know what I was talking about. I asked you that for this reason. God was doing something that was close to another city. You see, I didn't forget. I was setting y'all up for a 20-mile miracle. How many of y'all have actually ever heard of Zarethan before today? You see, Zarethan is approximately 20 miles away from where they crossed, which means for the waters to be cut off downstream at this exact moment, God must have been up to something before they got there. For the river to become dry, at this precise place, at this precise moment, it would have taken several hours. Why am I telling you this? Because the miracle started before they even stepped into the mud. God was up to something upstream, even though they couldn't see it just yet. But the moment they started concentrating, they discovered the Lord was already orchestrating. How many of you Have ever heard the phrase, you got to stay one step ahead of your kids? God says, I'll beat that. How about 20 miles ahead? So I need to speak to somebody in the room today who's having to trust God with something they can't see, even though it's 20 miles away. I'm talking about the stuff that you can't control. I'm talking about the stuff that you can't move. I'm talking about the river that is in front of you, and there's a wall city on the other side. I'm not talking about the stuff that you can do. Be obedient and do that stuff. Because obedience opens the door to miracles. But I'm talking about the stuff that's overflowing the banks of the Jordan. The stuff that I see that's written on all these prayer requests. I'm telling you to step into it anyway. Because God is 20 miles upstream already working on what you've been worried about. Because whenever you have a problem, you got to believe that God already has a plan. So give it to the Lord and leave it there. Trust that God is up to something even though you can't see it yet because it's 20 miles away. I got to tell you, the last 20 months have been nothing but muddy for me. But me and Dr. Verm, we chose to get mud all over our boots, believing that God was up to something even though we couldn't see it just yet. I have a friend named Casey who I've known pretty much my entire life, but we didn't become good friends till about 20 years ago when we kind of entered ministry, pastoring about the very same time. He had a guy in his church named Dennis who worked at a local bank. 20 years later, at the end of 2024 and 2025, he became president and CEO of that same bank. Casey, my friend of 20 years, got me in touch with, who decided to loan us the money to complete the construction of this project. I Googled, just for fun, to see how far my home in Tulsa was to his bank. Anybody want to guess? 20 and a half miles. God had been working 20 miles away to give us a miracle 20 years later. Whenever you have a problem, heaven has a plan. You can't see it yet. You're not supposed to. You just have to believe by faith that God is working upstream. So will you trust him while you wait?